So today we'll see report events. So in yesterday's programs, we have used report events. So in this session, we'll work more on these events. So what are the events? What are the report events available?
Initialization. Start of
Initialization at selection screen, start of selection,
So initialization event is to populate the
default
default
values,
values.
to the selection screen inputs. Next event is at selection screen.
Consumption.
This is to validate the selection screen inputs. Next event is start of selection. This is to
Below
write the
select.
business logic. Next event is
End
end
of
of
selection.
selection. This is to display the output. So we have other events like top of page, end of page. This is to display header and footer. We have interactive event that is outline selection.
okay, sir.
What is the first event of a program?
Initialization.
Initialization. So when this event will execute before displaying the
Before the selection
Input
selection screen.
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 So when this event will execute initialization event before
Before displaying the selection screen.
before displaying the selection screen. So what is the use of this event?
Default to
Trigger default values.
Selection screen inputs like parameters or select options, etc. Okay. So this event will trigger before displaying the selection screen. Clear?
Yes, sir.
calculated values. Why I'm including calculated values? Because default values you can also pass using a default keyword, right? When you are defining a parameter, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, yes.
But why we need a separate event, initialization event? For example, let's take a parameter p underscore some date type sy hyphen datum. I can provide the date here, right? Using default
Yes, sir.
and some date here, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Why I need to use initialization event to pass the default values? No use, right? When I have
Yes,
default keyword, what is the use of this? So here you can
Like,
provide only constant values, static values or hard-coded values. For example, if you want to pass the, let's check how it is going to populate. So the value will populate like this: 2001, 2023, whatever the date you are providing here. For example, if you want to pass the system date,
yes, very true.
it will populate
Yes,
the
sir.
system date.
System.
But my scenario or my requirement is to populate some calculated date. Depends on some calculation. I want to display the value. I cannot do that calculations here. For example, minus 10, previous 10 days date or future date. I cannot do that here. Calculations, I cannot do that in the default keyword, right?
Yes, sir.
For that reason, we have a separate event that is initialization where you can populate the calculated values as default values. For example, p underscore date equal to sy hyphen datum plus 10, some date, some calculation you can perform and pass the calculated value to the parameter. Okay, clear? Or you can also select the data from tables. For example, select ERDAT from Mara. Do we have that field? Select single. Do we have ERDAT in Mara? Let's try. Into uh, p underscore date. I'm not defining a new variable. I will populate directly into this parameter here. I'm not defining the variable. I'm not using any where condition. Let it select the first available field. ERDAT is not available. I think AEDAT available. AEDAT is. Let's check the Mara table. What is the date field available? Select single. Let's go to S11 and check. What? Why Mara table is not available?
Also not display, sir.
KO also not available. KPU also not available. Something wrong with the system.
okay.
It's morning we also didn't get any details.
So like this, you can select data from
Sir,
the
in
database tables and you can populate the parameters as default
sir,
values.
in parameter name we defined as wrong. I think p underscore date into at the rate p underscore date.
Yeah, that is okay. There is a issue with tables also. These tables are not available in data dictionary for some reason. Let me check in 2020. So yeah, they are available here. Let's create this program in 2020 server. So what is the other way? Calculated values in the sense you can also select data from database tables like this. Select single. What is the field available? This one I think ERSTA, right? You can calculate the value and pass it to the input, and you can select the data from database tables and populate it to the selection screen inputs. In initialization, you can also write select statements, correct? 12/3/2023, right? From where it is populating, from where the date is populating, from where this 12/3 is populating.
Initialization.
In initialization, from which statement?
Ah,
From
selection
select
table,
Selection
Mara table.
table. From selection table,
Marathi.
Mara table, it is selecting some record and populating that date as a default value to the parameter, right? So you'll definitely get this question, like since we have default keyword, why we need to use initialization option? So by using initialization, you can use select statements. Also, you can do some calculations to populate the default values, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, next event. At selection screen event. What is this event for?
To validate
Validate the selection screen.
Validate the selection screen
selection
inputs.
screen input.
Selection screen inputs, right? So validation in the sense, what is that validation? How can you validate it? How can you validate?
Based on parameter.
Okay, it's gone. I'll add that later. So how to validate the input? First type of validation is check the value available or not. What is second type of validation? Validate the value entered, right? What is the first type of value validation? Check is there
The value available or not.
available in the parameter or select option or not. If value is available, we need to validate that value. Is it a valid value or not? Okay. So we have a date parameter here. What is the first validation? We need to check whether there is some value entered by the user or not. That is first type of validation. If there is a value, we need to validate whether that value is a valid value or not, right? Two types of validations. Let's see how we are going to do that two types of validations. Now, let's check the first type of validation. If p underscore date is initial. This is first type of validation. What here we are checking user entered some value or not. What is the second type of validation? We need to validate whatever the value entered by the user is a valid value or not. Let's take one parameter for that. Let's take company code, Bookers, type. What is the type of company code field? Think Bookers only. I'm commenting or removing this. Now I need to validate company code Bookers. If it is initial, means this should not be empty. So in every report program, there might be some mandatory fields and optional fields, right? Mandatory field should not be blank, correct? There should be some value. How can you make sure to enter the mandatory values? You can use obligatory. Let's check how it is working. It is showing a red symbol, or in other systems you can see tick symbol. So fill out all required entry fields. Is it displaying about company code or anything? Is this message anything related to company code?
No, sir.
It is just saying you are missing some mandatory fields, right? When you are using obligatory. So we can achieve same kind of validation using at selection screen validation. That is, if p underscore bookers is initial. What do you mean by is initial?
Not any
Is
value.
empty.
Yes.
Is initial means if it is empty, what you need to do? If it is empty and if it is a mandatory
Safe
value,
validator.
I'll raise a error message using what is the error message type?
E.
E in capital
E.
letters. Now let's check. Let me try to execute. So it is displaying a proper message that enter the company code. So since we have only one parameter, you can easily identify what is the missing value. But in general, in any report program, you might have multiple input parameters like select options, parameters, radio buttons, etc. To maintain or to display proper error message, you can use at selection screen event. So this is first type of validation. What is the second type of validation? So let's say user entered some value. Let's say user entered some value. We don't know whether it is a valid company code or not. Execute. Is it displaying any error message?
Oh, sir.
But it is not a valid company code. I just entered some
Yes.
random values. How to validate the company code? How to validate the company code? So we observed that when we are creating the data dictionary tables, where can you find the master data of the company code? Check tables, right? In check tables, all the valid entries are maintained in check tables, right? Check tables nothing but master data tables.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now
Yes,
what
sir.
is the check table for bookers? Let's go to any table where you can find the bookers EKKO F7. This is company code. Go select this and select the foreign key relationship. What is the check table for bookers?
E001.
T001. What is T001? This is company code's master data.
Okay, sir.
Now, whatever the value entered by the user to validate it is a valid value or not, where you need to check that value?
Dave.
Check table,
Dave.
the corresponding check table.
Dave.
So what is the check table for company code? This one,
E001.
T001. Now how to validate this value? Write like this. If it is initial, raise error message, enter company code, else if
T00.
is not initial. If it is not initial, what we need to do? Not initial means there is some value, but we don't know that is a valid value or not, right? User can enter any value, right?
Yes, sir.
We cannot say that that is a valid value until unless we validated it. How to validate this value? Now check the data against that check table or master data table. Select single bookers from what is the master table check table
E001.
T001
Zero one.
into you can define a new variable or you can you can define a new variable like this or you can use the existing parameter p underscore bookers where bookers equal to which one p underscore
E_bookers.
bookers.
Yes, sir.
If hyphen sub rc equal to 0, sorry, what we need to check here, equal to 0 or not equal to 0? Not equal to 0, and if tries the error message, enter valid company code.
Yes, sir.
Let's enter some random value. There is some value, right? In Bookers. Now, the first if statement will fail. Then it will enter into the second else if statement. Is not initial. Then executing the select statement. What is the sub RC?
four.
4.
Because the
It
656 is not available in the table. T001 table. You can also check here.
is 6 7.
It is not available, right? Now, error message will be displayed. Enter valid company code. Whenever error message is raised, what will happen? The program processing will stop here at the error message. It won't proceed further. Next level statements are not going to be executed. Okay? When we raise a error message, there are different types of messages like a status message, warning message, right? When a status message is raised, the further statements can be executed. Okay, but whenever a error message is raised, the program processing will be terminated. Okay, next level statements are not going to be executed. Now try to enter a valid value. For example, this is a valid company code, right? 0001, because it is available in T001. Now sub RC equal to 0, error message is not triggered, right?
Yes, sir.
So this is the second type of validation. So whenever we are talking about validation, we should make sure that there is a value in the mandatory parameters. And we should also make sure the value whatever entered is a valid value. How can you validate the value? By checking against check tables, right? By using a select statement on the corresponding check table.
Yeah.
For example, if it is a customer field, let's say we have one more parameter, that is p underscore Kunar type. What is the type of Kunar?
Uh,
KNAG.
Now, how to validate this one? We have a second parameter. How to validate this? If p underscore Kunar is initial. So I'll assume this as this is a mandatory field. Company code is mandatory, but Kunar is not mandatory. User can enter or cannot enter. That is optional field. This parameter is a optional field. Now,
Okay,
how
sir.
will I validate it? I don't need to check, so I don't need to enforce the user to enter some value because it is optional. User may or may not enter the value, but whenever the user enters the value, we should validate the value. If there is no value, we don't need to validate it, right? Because it's an optional field. If there is a value, we should validate that value. How to validate that?
It's not an
If
issue.
p underscore Kunar is not initial, then validate this. How to validate? What is the check table for Kunar?
KNA1.
KNA1, right?
Yes, Kenya. Kunna from Kenya into at the rate of P Kunna.
I'll do it in a different way so that
Okay,
you can
sir.
also do like this. where Kunar equal to if sy hyphen
No.
not equal to 0, then
Not equal to
it is not a valid customer number.
yes, sir.
Okay, you can display this message. So depends on the scenario, we validate the values, right? Now let's try to execute start of selection. Here I'll display one message. Here I'll use a status message. Type yes. So right, it is for success messages. If you want to display any success status or success information, what is the message type you have to use?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. When this message is triggered, right, the program processing is not going to be stopped. It will proceed further. Okay, clear?
Okay, sir.
Execute. I'm not entering anything in Kunar.
Yes, sir.
Program execution is completed. Let me enter some junk value and execute.
Enter a valid customer.
It is validating the customer number because I've entered some value, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, which fields are highlighted in red color?
Both
Both are
fields.
highlighted in red color, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, where is the error?
Valid
In
Enter
Kunar
Enter
customer,
valid customers.
customer, there is a issue with valid customer number, right?
yes, sir.
There is no issue with company code, right?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
This is also highlighted in red color,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So
Yes,
so to avoid this, to make sure only error parameter is visible or error parameter is highlighted.
Highlight.
So what we need to do? We need to change slightly at selection screen on p underscore bookers, and here also for Kunar validation at selection screen on p underscore Kunar. What is this event for?
wait
This is to make
the
sure only the error parameter is highlighted, not all the parameters. Now check how this will work. Enter valid company code, some invalid customer ID, execute. Now which one is highlighted?
only the error
There only.
The only the error
double.
parameter is highlighted. This is disabled. Even it is not open for input, right?
Yes, sir.
So that user can easily understand where he needs to enter the value, where he needs to correct the value, right?
Yes, sir.
So for that, what we need to use? At selection screen on and the
Um,
parameter name.
uh,
At selection screen on and the different parameter name. You have to use it for every parameter validation.
okay, sir.
Okay. For example, so what is this at selection screen on for?
Wait, wait. Differentiate what is the error.
Yeah, to
Electric
highlight only the error
The error parameter.
parameter. And yeah, that's it. To highlight only the error parameter or error value, so you can use at selection screen on event. Okay, clear?
Yes, sir.
We have few other events like action on value request, at select screen output. So this is to at select screen output event is used to modify the selection screen dynamically. Depends on the selection options in the here. This is selection screen, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
depends on some condition, you can enable or disable these parameters, right? To modify the selection screen dynamically. For example, you can make this company code invisible, or you can make this customer ID invisible, depends on some selection. So what is the event for that? We need to use at selection screen
Action screen on value request.
output. So to modify the selection screen dynamically, at selection screen output. This is for F4 values, dynamic F4 values, right? This event at selection screen on value request is for F4 values. For for example, if you want to add any customized or dynamic F4 values for the parameter, this is F4 help, right? To select the data. For example, to add any custom F4 help values, what is the event that you need to use? At selection screen
Value
Value
on value
request.
request. Now start of selection. Which event?
part of selection.
Start of selection event will execute after at
At
selection
selection.
screen.
At selection.
If there is no errors in at selection screen, start of selection business logic will be triggered.
exit.
So usually this is a optional event, end of selection in normal ABAP, but this is mandatory in HR ABAP, ABAP related to HR module. Okay, this is to complete the logical database options. Anyway, you are not aware of it. That's okay. Okay, usually in normal ABAP you can use it to display the
The out
output after the data selections in start of. Okay, after all the data selections are completed in start of selection, you can use end of selection event to display the output. Okay,
Okay, sir.
so there
Okay,
are
sir.
other events like at line selection. This is an interactive event. So what is at line selection?
Interactive event.
Interactive event. That means what is interactive means? So let's say first you displayed some output, and when you click on that output, it should navigate to next level output. That is like interactive. So when you click on one value, it should display another output. Okay. So what is this event for? Headline selection, interactive reports. Okay. So whenever you click on the output, it should display next level output data. Okay. So these are few events. So we have other events like top of page, report header, end of page, display, report, footer. Okay. Clear?
Yes, sir.
So we may or may not use top of page, end of page, and headline selection, because headline selection is a classical interactive event. We have a lot of alternative for these events, but these are important in the interview point of view. What are the different types of events? Okay, is everyone clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sure.
So validations, when you need to validate the value, you need to write a select statement on that corresponding check table or master data table. Okay,
Yes, sir.
so please observe one thing. So we have Kunar in VBAK, right? This field in
Yes, sir.
VBAK, right? So the common
Yes.
mistakes what the beginners used to do is few people used to write select statement on which table?
VBAK.
VBAK, because Kunar is there in VBAK. That is not correct, right?
Okay, sir.
All the valid customers are available in KNA1. So a sales order record may or may not be created using that customer, right? Customer is a valid customer. That doesn't mean that he did some transactions, right?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Correct.
In that case, his record is not going to be available in VBAK if he is not created any sales orders yet. He might create in future, right? As of now, he did not create any sales orders. That's why his record is not going to be available in VBAK. If you check that customer ID in VBAK, you cannot find that value, right? Then
Yes, sir.
that doesn't mean that that customer is invalid customer. When you need to check, when you need to validate that customer from KNA1, then only you can understand is he a valid customer or not, because all the valid entries should be available in master data table. But VBAK, it is a transactional table. Okay.
Yes, sir.
For example, you opened your bank account, but you did not do any transactions yet. Let's say there is a table customer transactions, right? If I write any select statement on customer transactions, like is there any record available for your customer ID?
No, sir.
No,
No,
sir.
right? Because you did not make any transactions yet.
Transactions.
But are you a valid customer of the bank or not?
I'm a valid
You are a valid
customer.
customer, but there is no transactions in that table, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's why we should always validate the entries against its master table. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Any questions? So events are very important. Please go through all events. So it's a very important interview question. When someone asks you about the events, right? Don't list out and stay calm. Okay. Explain about each event. in the sequence. Okay,
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 sir.
sir.
starting from initialization, event
Initial
selection screen, start of selection, end of selection, and these interactive events like headline selection,
top of
uh,
page,
top
end
of
of
page,
page.
end of
Top,
page.
top, top,
Okay,
end up.
clear?
Yes, sir.
These are very important. So practice these events, practice programs using these events. Also apply the validations. Okay, and tomorrow we'll see modularization techniques.